Okay, the national eviction ban that was overturned last week has actually gone to appeal. So, guess what? We're back to normal. Things remain in place because the government appealed that decision. Is this a surprise? Probably not to most people. Welcome to Housing Bubble 2.0 News of the Week, or as I like to call it, another episode of As the Housing Market Turns. Today is the 10th of May. It's a Monday. Hope you're doing well. We're going to talk about this and a few other things today. So that's, I'm not surprised whatsoever. But first of all, tomorrow night, which is Tuesday the 11th, I'm doing another live stream, State of the Nation, the housing market here, Housing Bubble 2.0. So it's on my Facebook Live. Basically, why I do it there, it's because I have more control and more effect as to what I'm saying and what I'm doing, etc. So please tune into that if you'd like. You just don't have to subscribe or get a link. Just go to the Facebook page, like it or follow it, and guess what? You should be notified when I come on 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. PST. I'm going to talk about the state of the housing market. Get into some other things that I don't talk about readily on this medium, and then there'll be a time for question and answer. So definitely tune into that. Jump on board. It'll be well worth your time. All right, guys. National eviction ban remains in effect as government appeals the ruling. Here's what renters need to know. All right. So guess what? They're okay. So everyone is, I guess you could say a sigh of relief is out here now because essentially that ban that was really unconstitutional is now not the ban, but the fact that the CDC's position as controlling or implementing the eviction moratorium was unconstitutional. They have no rights to overstep their boundaries. That change has been overturned because it's the appeal. Hasn't been overturned, I guess, technically, but I guess with the appeal, things go back to normal here. So basically, renters who are financially struggling because of the coronavirus impact got some scary news. Basically, because the eviction ban was going to stop 2 months, earlier than the extension. Basically, Department of Justice within hours said it would appeal and sought a stay of the decision, meaning the ban would remain in effect throughout the court battle. So for now, the judge has granted a temporary stay, meaning the renters can breathe a small sigh of relief. So there you go. So we kind of had a little bit of a win on one side, and now it's been taken away. I know it depends on your perspective on things here, but as I always say, it's not the landlords that are the problem here. The landlords need to, I'm pro everything, all right? Everything has to work in concert. Everything has to sort of mesh together. And when one segment of the industry is taking a beating and the other isn't, that's not typically fair and things will fall apart. But first of all, if you're not already a subscriber, if you could help my channel grow and smash that subscribe button, I really appreciate that. And second, if you think you're already a subscriber, chances are that you could have been dropped by this platform. So if you could please resubscribe and check it out. Make me happy. Thank you very much. All right. Appreciate it. All right. So here's the thing. So I've been going on a couple blogs because obviously, when this decision happens, you got, hey, we're going to, start processing evictions again, but it's appeal. So now we're stuck in the same point. So, this blog that I'm pulling this information from here is going out talking to various people in different parts of the country saying what's going on. So this lady who's in New York says one of her rental apartments was damaged by its last tenant, who says she refused to pay knowing she'd be protected under the New York's eviction moratorium. We have mortgages to pay. We have taxes to pay. We have upkeep for people that need it. We're there for them, and they've been very communicative and discussed all their obstacles, and we understand. But it's the blatant abuse that's really kind of tearing us down, and it's leaving us frustrated, in debt, and a pit in our stomach. I mean, we're not sleeping at night because we're just as feeling helpless as property owners. So yeah, that's exactly right. So, you're going to still have to do things, or you're going to get phone calls. Hey, the toilet's not working. The air's not working. The heat's not working. I've got a leak. So all those things are going to happen. And in order to prevent further damage to your property, you're going to have to outlay that cash to fix these things, even though you don't have any money coming in, this is where I can see landlords getting pinched. And I'm talking about the mom and pop, smaller segment landlords, not the big corporations that own hundreds of thousands of homes. We're talking about the mom and pop landlord, which really makes up one of the largest segments of providing rental property to people across the country here. Now, this is from Union Tribune in California. San Diego leaders adopt a countywide temporary rent cap on May the 4th and new rules to make evictions even more difficult for landlords during the pandemic. So the small landlord said many people are renting properties need to take rental housing off the market if eviction bans and rent caps continue. Small landlords like me have to somehow figure out how to sell our rentals to pay our mortgages. So this is exactly what I've talked about for many times, saying where this is going to go. So, where we think that's helping people, well, look what this quote says. We're going to need to take rental housing off the market. So even though we need rental housing, there's always a segment of the population that needs it. It needs it now more than ever. Landlords are going to go, why am I going to rent when a renter can pay me my first and last months and then fall under some eviction moratorium and not pay? They can game the system. Small landlords like me will have to somehow figure out how to sell our rentals to pay our mortgages. So really, we've put, well, not we, but the current policies and administration have put landlords kind of in a bind here, and we know where that's going to end up. It's going to start to flow the other way, and it's going to cause more chaos. So you're going to have less rental property, people selling their homes to cover their losses and pay off the debts they owe on these properties. So it's not really the intention here. It's going to hurt the overall rental market. Now this, we're going to do a couple of slides on this person here, because when you actually dig into it, you go, now I see what's happening, and I get some of the reasoning, because I've been reading a lot of stuff about this lately, and the fact that there is money available, but there's difficulty getting that money. And do tenants get a chance to get at it? Do landlords get a chance to get at it? It's kind of hard to figure stuff out. So you got to do a little research on this. So this guy, landlord, featured in the Washington Post story on the acrimony resulting from a year of unpaid rent, doubts his tenants protected by an eviction moratorium at least through August will bother to apply. This is basically applying for that tenant, rent relief. They're telling themselves, why should we go and do all these things and hustle to apply when nobody can put us out of our apartment? All right. Our guys are small property owners who haven't paid rent since March, said landlord lobbyist Joe Strasberg. They'll take the money knowing full well that if the tenant decides to game the system for the next year, they're stuck. I'm like, well, what was this actually meaning here? But let's step back a bit here, going, okay, so if I'm a tenant, I'm going, why do I care? Why should I jump through hoops and do stuff my landlord wants me to do? Well, in the end, it doesn't make a difference to me because I'm not paying for it anyway. What do I care? I can stay here because I'm protected by this moratorium. So part of it is education. Part of it is lack of information coming from the media, lack of information coming from all aspects of what's going on here. But the fact that they can work through this system, it still hurts the landlords. So further down, I went to the blog here. It says, last year that pushed the cat-dog dichotomy of landlord-tenant relation to extremes. Here's the thing. The law allows either party to start an application for relief. So we're talking about landlord-tenant relief programs that are available from the government, okay? But for money to be doled out, tenants must request funds that will go directly to the landlord, and the landlord must in turn accept them. Both have reasons for not doing their part. So basically, again, as I said, the guy who was featured in this Washington Post article said, they're not going to bother to apply because why should they? They're telling themselves, why should we go do all these things and hustle to apply when nobody can put us out of our apartment? Which really is, if you think about it, why do I have to jump through hoops when I don't get benefit from it? The benefit's the landlord. I don't have to do anything because I'm protected by these moratoriums. So it's really this situation where no one's helping each other out here. Senator Brian Kavanagh, who chairs the Senate Housing Committee, said the program has much going for it. Up to 12 months of back rent and 3 months of future rent. Last year's paid the difference between 30% of a tenant's income and the rent due. He expects the new offer will draw both parties. Tenants and landlords don't have to hold hands and have warm feelings for each other to participate. But here's the interesting part, though. And this is where there's always reasons. When you start going down and drilling down, you take a look at things. But the tenant-landlord standoff goes both ways. Even if renters sign up for relief, landlords who accept it can't evict a paying tenant for a year and could otherwise be stuck with a non-paying tenant because of an extended moratorium or housing court delays. So everything's got a catch to it. So if I accept the money as a landlord, so say I get back rent, well, guess what? I'm caught up, but they could still, I can't evict them for another year. So there's still moratoriums, and we don't know how long it's going to go on for in this case because now it's been appealed. What am I going to do? I could be stuck, just again in another year from now in the same situation. So I think what we're seeing here is landlords just want this to end. Let's just, they pretty much figured out we're never going to get this money back. It's not like if a tenant's not paying, a tenant's not keeping that money in their pocket going, well, there'll be a day when I'm supposed to pay you on my back rent, and here it all is. And we know that's not going to happen. So if tenants aren't applying for the money or helping landlords out, etc., what are we going to do here, right? I just think there's a lot of miscommunication, misinformation, lack of awareness, and lack of a process to follow this up. But as you can see, why would I bother doing something if I don't get a direct benefit from it? Which is what's in it for me typically. And here, if I'm a landlord, if I take the money as a landlord, what am I obligating myself to do that could further hurt me down the road? If you're a landlord, if you have a tenant that's not paying, what's the first thing you want to do? Get them out of the property. Get them out. All right. You don't want to go into negotiations and mess around. If they're so far behind, the chances of you getting any money is slim to none on a typical situation. So you want to get them out. Cover your or whatever. Just take your licks, cover the losses the best you can. Probably going to have to fix up the place, paint it, refresh whatever. Then you're going to rent it out again. You want that process to be done with and over with, etc. If I get some back rent paid to me, but now to get that back rent, I can't evict for another year plus, are you going to do that? I mean, that's the whole point. It's like you're just prolonging the inevitable and you're prolonging the damage or increasing your risk. You got some money back, but you're still increasing your risk. So I can see where landlords would certainly have some issue with engaging this. So here's the thing. Our guys are small property owners who haven't been paid rent since March, said the dude who's the president of the Rent Stabilization Association. They'll take the money knowing full well that if the tenant decides to game the system for the next year, they're stuck. And that's exactly the point we're making here, is the fact that, everything is a catch. Why can't landlords and tenants work together? Why can't there be provisions where you owe the money, we're giving you the government's giving the relief, we're all paying for it as taxpayers ultimately in the end. Why can't it go to the landlord to say, here, we're covering you because we've covered the tenant, right? The tenant's been covered, let's cover the landlord, but now there's a condition associated with it. So really is take some money now, but you could be stuck with this tenant for another year. So that I don't think that's really a great deal. Again, we have to understand more and figure out the terms and conditions of all these sort of rental assistance programs. But the whole point, though, is that it's nice when it's talked about. It's nice when it's given a monetary value. It's nice when it's made available. From an administrative perspective, it's the execution and the technical aspects of things in the fine print that actually, when you delve into things, it's probably not as good as it seems or provides the relief or what people were expecting. Headlines are great. Housing headlines are always wonderful. Everything's good. Look what we're doing. Great, great, great. But when you get down to the nitty gritty, there's always disappointment. That's what I found constantly, and we see it like this happening with this as well. All right, interesting here. So this article talks about, and now rents are soaring too. Now this is really more rents with respect to single-family homes, because you can go on different websites, apartment.com and Zumper and whatever. You can take a look at rental rates for different locations. Or typically they produce 1 and 2 bedroom rental rates for the month, and we see the larger markets for apartments dropping, and then we see if relocation from those areas, to maybe tier 2 or tier 3 locations, those rents going up because of mass exodus and transition and stuff like that. So that's what we see on the apartment side. But really on the single family rental side, we're starting to see rents soaring right now. And looks like Bank of America is predicting that the U.S. is facing a period of, I got to get this word right here, period of transitory hyperinflation as a result of soaring commodity prices and everything from metals to food. What's also in there? Lumber prices, housing units, like everything. It's all in there, right? So basically, everything is going up, and we are kind of in a hyperinflation position right now. Now, if you take a look at things, again, we start looking at statistics and stuff like that. Redfin put out some information that basically says, it makes sense that home prices are also surging thanks to the trillions of stimulation checks, near record low mortgage rates, and an exodus of people away from the cities. We noted 2 weeks ago that precisely that's what they're doing, with Redfin reporting that an 18% jump in median home sale prices to an all-time high. As a record, 58% of all houses sell within 2 weeks of listing, of which 45% sell for more than their listing price, also a record. So basically, it's so tight right now. You list your home, you'll have it sold within 58% of the time. So 58% of people sell within 2 weeks, and almost 45%, almost 50% of the people will actually get more than their listing price. That sounds like a pretty good deal. If you're a seller, the key is what do you do and where do you go, right? That's kind of the question here. But interesting enough, when you start looking at this, it's like, well, how is this going to affect, as things kind of roll out here? Well, the issue we're seeing here is the way the consumer price index basket is weighted with respect to housing, is that, we've been telling this for a long time, that distorts the inflationary picture big time. And for whatever reason, the Fed tends to use the rental index as the method of calculating the consumer price inflation index with respect to housing. They're using the rental thing. So here's the deal. It's saying here that appears that only the government was misrepresenting the actual data, hopes of extracting as much stimulus from the Biden regime by pretending that inflation was low and contained, but that rents are in fact soaring once again. Well, how do we know that? Well, here's the deal. On Thursday, American Home for Rent, which owns 54,000 houses, we know them personally. We sold some of our short sales to them back in the day. Increased rents 11% on vacant properties in April. The company reported in a statement. Basically, look at their occupancy. They continue to experience demand with the same home portfolio average occupied days of 97.3% in the first quarter of this year, while achieving a 10% rental rate growth on new leases, which accelerated further to April to an average occupied days in the high 97%, which achieving over 11% rental rate growth in new leases. So here's the thing. You're going to get new leases. You're going to get people who are going to release the thing. Any vacant homes that are out there, they're going to go, you know what? We'll just do a little cleanup and refresh, and now we're going to raise our rents. Why? Because we can, because we know we can. So vacant properties for these big hedge fund people, these big, we'll call them institutional investors own these properties. They're juicing their rent up here, which is unreal. And if you look at the bottom, while soaring housing costs have put homeownership out of reach for most Americans, rent had been relatively tame for much of 2020. But in recent months, rents have also soared as vaccines fuel optimism about a rebound from the pandemic and the reversal in the city to suburbs exodus. The increases, as Bloomberg puts it, may add to concerns about inflation pressures. Okay, companies are trying to figure how hard they can push the envelope before they start losing people. So basically, that's the thing. Let's keep, kind of like on the housing price side, let's keep listing high, because you can list it as high as you want. If offers come in lower, you figure out and adjust accordingly. Well, in this case, you've got basically a situation where let's raise our rents and see what we get. Now, rents work both ways. Rents, you get, the thought process is if you're raising rents, you're getting a better qualified person, are you? Because they can pay more, they can afford more. So that's the thought process too, is that if I'm raising rent and people are paying for it, I'm getting a more secure, better financed client in this case. So we'll have to see how that pans out. For example, Invitation Homes did the same thing as well too. They reported an occupancy rate of more than, I think it's 98% during the first quarter, freeing the company to raise prices by more than 10% on vacant houses. Invitation Homes is targeting increases as much as 8% from tenants seeking to renew leases in coming months. So if you're already in a lease and your lease is expiring, rents are going to go up. So I would look at your lease and make sure you read the clause that talks about increases in rent, and your lease should talk about. And normally leases do either have a cap or they give you some sort of range that rent can increase. If it's not there, then they can increase as much as they want. Now you can not accept that increase and then not renew your lease and move on. That's fine. That's up to you. But the whole point is that, like this article is saying, all these massive hedge funds, institutional investors that are offering rental single-family homes, they're going to take the opportunity to increase. So in typical historic, we see in leases rent increases 3%, 4% per year. That's typically what we see, what I've seen. So clearly, if we're doing 8 and 10, 11%, that's actually doubling what's been the norm over the past couple of years. So it's just the way, how much the demand is temporary. They're saying, I do believe some component of it will never revert back to urban markets. So the thought process here is a lot of people who have left the urban area, gone to the burbs, and want to rent the single-family homes. That this is not a short-term thing. They're staying. They're not going back to the urban centers, even if things change for whatever reasons. And there's many of them. They're preferring to live in a single-family home in a non-densely or less dense populated area. So there you go. So they say, so as rent rebound with a vengeance, and the CPI basket's all important shelter and rent inflation series jerks higher. How much longer can the Fed pretend that the vastly overheating U.S. economy is not in a transitory hyperinflation mode, or at least on the verge of stagflation? So that's the whole point here, is that for whatever reason, the Fed is using the wrong, hang on a sec here, is using the wrong, I have a floating desk, by the way, here, so I just hit the wrong button, and it's floating up and down. Anyway, the whole point here is that they're using that index, which really is the rental index, to talk about housing inflation, saying it's not there. That's what the ultimate, we'll call it, talking point complaint is from a lot of the economists that are out there. So that's the scoop on that. So really, what's the sum of today? Nothing's changed, right? We had the eviction ban being, eradicated, but now it's back in with an appeal, so it's still there. So is there relief for landlords? We're not too sure. Is there relief monetary for tenants and landlords? Apparently there is, but you have to work together. You got to figure this stuff out. You have to be careful what you're signing and what you're accepting, because it could have ramifications for you down the road and still keep you handcuffed. So I don't know what's going on. It is confusing. There's a lot that's happening out there, but the point to all this is the fact that something's got to give, and we're at the point now where when you have housing prices at peak values, when you have rents rising, people are going to cry uncle. Eventually it's going to start to have to change because we just can't handle it. That's the way it goes here. So what's next opportunity? Well, basically owners will need to sell. We just heard that or saw that, saying if I'm an owner, I might have to liquidate because I've got back more rent that I got to pay, or back mortgages or back expenses. All right, insurance, property taxes, upkeep, the whole bit. So we're going to start seeing some of these problems manifest as time goes on. Very soon. It's already happening right now. We'll see an uptick in foreclosure auctions being filed, an uptick in foreclosure filings. Some of the states are opening up. We'll see more short sales eventually listed. Eventually, an increase in REOs. More will be available than predicted of what's happening, because the true numbers aren't really being shown to us with respect to forbearance, foreclosures, and issues. Seems like every time I look at numbers, things are changing, and it's always, oh, look, we're improving. But in the end, I know, and other people that I deal with know, that this is just a red herring and things are not going to play out as people think. All right, guys. So why do you want to get involved in distressed property business? Because look at the short sales for my market here. An example, traditional median sales price for a single-family residential home was $295 back in February for the Tampa Bay metro area. Okay, an REO that was sold, the median sales price was $278K, which is a bit less. Look at the short sales, $217,000 on average. So yeah, there's a lot less short sales being sold, clearly, which tells us a couple things, that people aren't going after them from a real estate agent and a real estate investor perspective. Short sales do give you discounts, and you've got equity built in right there. So if you want to know more about how to get into this market, you need to contact me. I'll be happy to help you. And by the way, gethousingdata.com. Go to this website. Take a look at what foreclosure.com is offering to find out the distressed properties in your neighborhood. Please go to gethousingdata.com. Promoting that. I'll tell you about how to do all this. Connect with me. And by the way, one more, I guess you could say, reminder that tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. PST, I'm going to go through a State of the Nation of the Housing Bubble 2.0. I'm going to talk about the reasons why we are still going to have a housing crash. All the videos out there, because I look at the thumbnails and stuff, it's like, well, we're going to have a housing crash, or we're not going to have a housing crash, or maybe that's going to be there's all this back and forth. I'm going to tell you exactly what's going on, exactly what I think, support it with the information like I always do, so that you're prepared and knowing what's going to happen as time goes on in the very near future. So again, join me on my Facebook page at Housing Bubble 2. I'll go live. We'll talk about it. We'll have time for Q&A, and we'll talk more openly about what's going to happen in the housing market. So thank you very much. So appreciate the likes, views, and comments. Please share this with your family and friends. If you're not already a subscriber, please smash that subscribe button, and we'll look forward to speaking with you guys when? Tomorrow night, May 11th on the Facebook Live. All right. Thank you, everybody. Take care.